following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
People paying money to see me in a 20 by 20 ring.
Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the 20 by 20 Ring Crew. I am Joe and I'm here with my cohort Matt. What's going on, Matt?
Hey yo.
And as always, we have wrestling on in the background.
You want to call it that?
Surprisingly, we are watching the current episode of WWE's Monday Night Raw. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the go-home episode before the Royal Rumble 2019.
That's correct.
And we're currently watching, well, an ad about Popeyes, but Heavy Machinery versus The Ascension on Raw. Jesus.
On Raw. Two good NXT tag teams that are going to be worthless on the main roster.
Well, one is already worthless on the main roster. The other one's just too new to be called that already. Good Lord.
Yeah.
What has the world come to? This is obviously out of the ordinary for us. And not that fan requested episodes are out of the ordinary for us, but I think today's topic is kind of out of the ordinary for us. And I say that because the question I'm posing to you is, how in the hell did we go almost a full year, week after week after week, and not do a show about the New World Order?
Yeah, it just seems the NWO, I think, in a nutshell, was what made so many people, both young and old, especially in that era, fall in love with wrestling again, or fall in love with wrestling for the first time. So I look forward to finally discussing it and giving it its proper recognition. It's about time.
Yeah, I agree. A big NWO fan. I got to see it all happen as it happened. So
Right.
That was super exciting for me. I know I especially the guys that I worked with at my old 9-to-5 gig. A lot of us were wrestling fans at the time, and you had that excitement and enthusiasm. Every Monday night we'd be glued to the television set, and then the following day at work, you'd catch us, either throwing toothpicks at people or, all kinds of shenanigans.
I said this line, I know I've said it on the show before, but the Bullet Club is, and just kind of give you an idea of what the NWO is to so many people. The Bullet Club is everything the NWO should have been. And we're going to talk more about that, but in a nutshell, I think that pretty much sums it up.
I agree, man.
And that feeling of just the coolest thing going on was pro wrestling, but then on top of all that, you have the NWO that just took wrestling, especially in that era, and brought it to levels that it's never seen before.
So we're making this like our obligatory NWO episode. But the fan request here is, someone wanted to know if there was any truth to the NWO angle being ripped off by Eric Bischoff from another wrestling company, specifically in Japan. That's what we're here to talk about first and foremost.
Right.
Everything else will be supporting content, if you will. But that's a really interesting question. One that I don't think it's talked about often enough. Because when I don't know about you, but for me, part of the reason at least on my end, that we haven't delved into anything NWO is because, to me, it's all been done to death.
Yeah, I mean, you can just use your subscription to WWE Network to find out everything you need to know.
Yeah. And then, you know, obviously there's YouTube for shoot interviews and things like that. And
yeah. It's a very common concept of pro wrestling.
Absolutely.
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 When we, and 20 years from now, you could say the same thing about the Bullet Club. You know, it's...
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
It's been said before. It's been done, you know, and so, yeah, it's just... There was no point to talk about something you guys already know about.
I listened to what actually is the first episode of Eric Bischoff's 83 Weeks podcast with him and Conrad Thompson. If you're not familiar, you can YouTube it. Go check it out. I listened to that, and literally, I didn't have to listen to the entire thing, but he pretty much gets, he as in Eric Bischoff, gets it out of the way right away. Because Conrad Thompson asks him, did you rip off the NWO angle from a Japanese company? And Bischoff tells him blatantly, no, I did not. He says a lot of the confusion comes in with fans where I was out in Japan trying to figure some stuff out for WCW, and he essentially took the ideas that were presented in their wrestling culture and tried to apply it to American pro wrestling in a nutshell. And I know everything on the internet, especially in the way of wrestling podcasts, should be taken with a grain of salt because, you know, a variety of reasons. But I tend to believe Eric Bischoff here, as clever as he was back then, I don't think that was ever his intent, and I don't think he would have actually been clever enough to do something like that. Because let's face it, it took him a while. When you think about it, it took him a while to bring Hall and Nash over to begin with.
Yeah.
And even after they were aboard, they still hadn't really finalized the whole NWO angle. He knew he wanted to take those guys and bring them into the company. They didn't necessarily have a plan for them right away. So more often than not, a lot of people don't understand those first few weeks where you see Hall come out of the back or you know,
right,
out of the crowd.
Yeah.
And then even when Nash shows up, like, essentially they're kind of like buying time. I mean, they had a loose plan in place, but nothing really solid and concrete to where they were like, hey, we need to execute this, and, you know, because we have all our shit together. I know that's hard to believe, but...
Yeah, I mean, but if you go back to those, you know, it wasn't very... So, obviously, Scott Hall showing up on an episode of Nitro was huge, but it's impactful only because he's there. Like, nothing more, nothing less. It's like,
yeah,
what the hell is he doing here?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like he cut this, you know, ridiculously awesome promo because that's not Scott Hall. He doesn't do things like that. He tries, but he's not very good at it. Everything seemed to kind of be right place, right time. You got two big names in WWE. They come to WCW, and it's just everything kind of accidentally fell in place perfectly. Because no, I don't buy the fact that Eric Bischoff is his mastermind. I just don't.
And he seemed to agree with you on that podcast. Mm-hmm. Like, he did want something important and awesome to happen, but they were still trying to figure shit out.
I mean, you gotta keep in mind, we're talking about the same guy that made so many bonehead decisions in regards of, you know, Nitro. You're so focused on putting another company under, to the point that you make these other bonehead decisions, and we're talking about, this is the same guy that came up with this. I don't fully buy it. I'm not saying it was completely accidental how it all fell together, but there's a lot of things that kind of just happen.
Yeah.
You know, just right place, right time. And it's like, he was smart enough to say, you know what, let's roll with this.
Yeah, I think, yes. That's very important. So back to the question at hand.
Right.
Was the NWO angle based off or ripped off from a Japanese angle? And this is where we start to talk about the UWF. For those who don't know, the UWF originally started out in Japan in 1984 as the Universal Wrestling Federation. It was formed originally by stars that defected from the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster, some of which included, by all means this isn't a complete roster, but Yoshiaki Fujiwara, Kazuo Yamazaki, Nobuhiko Takada, and Akira Maeda, which we'll get back to him. He's probably one of the most important. And another one, Satoru Sayama, the original Tiger Mask.
Yeah.
So keep at least those two guys' names in your head while we're talking about this. They're going to play very important parts in this episode. So they originally defected because all of these guys had legitimate martial arts training in addition to their pro wrestling training, and they wanted to provide a more realistic product to the wrestling industry, pro wrestling industry. So this ended up resulting in the UWF, and they wanted a more shoot-based style of wrestling. So more kickboxing strikes, more submission holds, and that was the focus of their company. And let's be honest, we're kind of going through that right now with All Elite Wrestling. They want to do something different. Not necessarily shoot-based, but they want to do something different.
Right.
We're still yet to see that at this point because they haven't had their first official card, but it's going to be interesting. So these guys formed the UWF, and even after they formed the UWF and started going, you still had some of the original roster not being able to adapt to that shoot style, and so they left. Guys like Ryo Mago and Rusher Kimura, they left to All Japan Pro Wrestling because they were like, fuck this shit. We just want to do pro wrestling like we were doing pro wrestling, and that's that. So they left. Early in 1984, the UWF president, Hisashi Shinma, struck a deal with the WWF for a working relationship. So you got to see guys like Akira Maeda, and he ended up winning the Intercontinental title, be a part of WWF television and programming. The working relationship ended near the end of July of 84, and Hisashi Shinma, the president of UWF himself, defected to All Japan because he was also like, fuck this shit, I don't want any part of it. So he left too. They seemed doomed from the start. It seems like every time they had some momentum going, important people would leave. But the promotion had other problems. Osamu Kido, who was trained by Karl Gotch, joined the UWF right as the promotion was finding its footing and gaining some more momentum in a positive manner. But that period also saw their top two stars in Akira Maeda and in the original Tiger Mask, in Sayama, begin arguing over the essence and focus of the product. So you had Maeda, who wanted the product to be more focused on submissions, and then you had Sayama wanting the product to be more focused on kicks or kickboxing, and it drew them it drew them apart from what they originally came into, and they became really shitty with one another to the point where a few of the matches that they had together, it finally all came to a head in September of 1985, where they were going head to head in a match, and it became an actual shoot fight. There was no holding back, in Japan they call it going cement. They don't necessarily refer to it as a shoot. So during the match, Maeda decided to kick Sayama in the groin, and he ends up getting disqualified in the match. You can view the match. We'll have the link for you on our website for this episode. You can view the match, and you can judge for yourself just how much of this was a shoot or not. I myself, I could tell you right now, most wrestling fans they hear the word shoot and immediately they think, oh my God, we're going to see a real fight. Guys, more often than not, a real shoot fight in between two pro wrestlers, it's pretty much uneventful.
Yeah.
Because there's still strategy involved.
Right.
You know, you're just because two people are fighting doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to be treated to some like
Benoit Sullivan type shit.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good example. You're absolutely right. It isn't necessarily going to be very eventful.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of locking up, a lot of just trying to not be hit.
There's also a lot of stiffing on cell jobs.
Yes,
you do see that, and again, that doesn't make for entertaining television.
Right. So the link for the fight will actually be there because it is available on YouTube, and you do get to see Sayama get kicked in the groin, and you can tell. I mean, he drops to his knees and he's hurt and the whole nine. Referee disqualifies Maeda. Later, Maeda would get suspended from the company because of what he did. And then that led to him being fired because after he was suspended, he decides he's not going to kind of play ball with them anymore.
Right.
And that kind of begins it's like the beginning of the end for Maeda and UWF. So after that, Sayama, original Tiger Mask, was so butthurt about what happened that he ends up quitting the business for something around like 11 years. And he completely fell out of love with pro wrestling because of this. I don't know. I wasn't in my Sayama's head, and I'm still not in Sayama's head, but to me that's kind of harsh to just like get kicked in the nuts and be like, I'm done with this for 11 years.
I'm done with pro wrestling, yeah.
Yeah. But I digress. Yeah. So the promotion dissolves, and most of the roster returns to New Japan Pro Wrestling circa 1986. Now, Akira Maeda, he ends up going back to New Japan as part of the Exodus, and he gets suspended again. And this time, it's for going shoot on Riki Choshu. Now, that is also on YouTube. We will also have the link to that. That was much more exciting than his bout with Sayama. This is during a 6-man tag, which involved the teams of Riki Choshu, Masa Saito, and Hiro Saito against Akira Maeda, Nobuhiko Takada, and Osamu Kido. And essentially what happens is they're taunting each other for a majority of the match. Especially Maeda, where he's continually like, you know what? Put up or shut up. Come get some. You really want a piece of me? Let's do it. Come in the ring with me. And it gets there's like this very unpleasant tension in the ring to the point where Maeda is deliberately doing things to egg it on. And eventually you see Choshu lock up one of his opponents in the ring.
Just flat out kicks him in the face.
And Maeda comes out from the apron into the ring, and he comes in and he straight up kicks Choshu in the face.
He's not even in the match at this point.
No, he's on the apron.
Yeah, he's not a legal man.
He's not.
He just walks in nonchalant. Fuck you, kicks you in the face.
Yeah.
And then he just nonchalantly walks away. And And Choshu continues the move, but afterward he's like, "You want to go?" Like,
so Choshu was setting up for the Sasiro Gatame on Kido, and then
kind of like a sharpshooter almost.
Yeah, and then comes the shoot kick, which results in a broken orbital bone on Riki Choshu's face. This match happened at Korakuen Hall in Tokyo on November 19th of 1987. When you go to our website and look at the YouTube link, the shoot kick that we're talking about happens at the 3:23 mark, 3 minutes 23 seconds in, and you'll get to see exactly what we're talking about. It's pretty exciting stuff. Out of the two videos that we just mentioned, this was definitely my favorite because you get to see a lot more going on. There's a lot more taunting. Maeda gives no fucks. He's all about fighting because he can really fight. So he's like, come on in. I'll beat the shit out of you. And then he couldn't wait anymore, so he just walked in the ring and cracked Choshu in the face. This, of course, leads Maeda, Kazuo Yamazaki, Nobuhiko Takada, all to defect to New Japan again, joining the likes of Yoji Anjo, Tetsuya Nakano, and they start up the newborn UWF, which happens about February of 1988. So they're at it again. They're trying to make amends and just go on and create this product again. Early 1989 saw Akira Maeda and the then New Japan promoter in Antonio Inoki agree to Fujiwara rejoining the UWF from New Japan. So they negotiated contracts and got Fujiwara back in the UWF. Now, this is important because Fujiwara brought two of his top disciples, two of his top students in with him. And they were Masakatsu Funaki and the one and only Minoru Suzuki.
Might have heard of him.
So he brings those guys into the UWF. We all know, well, anyone who watches New Japan these days, we all know what a beast Minoru Suzuki has become and what he is. Here's where it started.
Is this and you're more of an expert on this than I am, is this like the foundations for Minoru Suzuki to create Pancrase?
Absolutely.
Part of the founders of Pancrase?
Absolutely.
If you guys have never seen Pancrase, it still exists.
It still exists.
But like, I would highly recommend streaming services get UFC Fight Pass because every Pancrase event is on there, and it's some really fucking good shit. Really good shit. So yeah, when going through our notes, when I saw that on there, I was like, I gotta bring that up because it has to be the foundation for it. Minoru Suzuki at 50 years old scares the shit out of me.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't want to get in the ring with him.
No, neither would I.
Those poor young lions.
Akira Maeda steps down as president of the UWF in 1990 after there were disputes with the new president, Shinji Jin, because Shinji Jin wanted to work with other promotions, and Maeda didn't. He was like, fuck that. It's just us and us alone against the rest of the wrestling world, because he really wanted the product to stand alone and stand out. But the UWF's final card was on December 1st of 1990, or so we thought, because then in a few months later, in May of 1991, Yamazaki, Takada, Anjo, and Nakano, all without Maeda, again give birth to the UWF, this time in the form of UWFI. Their excitement was renewed, and they decided, hey, this time Maeda's not involved, we'll be good, right? Wrong. Started having money problems about 4 years later, and they reached out to their former competitor in the form of New Japan to work out an interpromotional deal, which basically what they did was they ended up joining the one company that kept trying to get away from this whole time that they were alive and operating. So it's weird that sometimes how things come back around. But they came up with this angle, and this is where the the topic of our episode comes in. So UWFI and New Japan Pro Wrestling agree, and they decide to work together, and they come up with this angle of the UWFI invading New Japan. It began on October 9th of 1995. The name of the card is called Clash, New Japan versus UWFI. And it was literally billed as a who would be better. You know, our guys against your guys, straight up, match versus match. Whoever has the most wins is the winner of this war, if you will.
Right.
Terms were agreed with New Japan, and I don't know how this happens, but New Japan gets to book the entire card. Not just some of the matches, all the matches. Anybody who has listened to enough pro wrestling podcasts or watched enough shoot interviews knows the power of the book. And to give your competition, as it were, the entire book for the card, you're pretty much fucking dooming yourself. I don't know how this fucking happened, but it happened. So, most of the matches, by nature, were won by New Japan Pro Wrestlers. And it made the UWFI look incredibly weak for a brand, for a company that was supposed to be shoot style and more realistic fighting. They just lost to a bunch of pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
What also didn't make sense was that out of all of the matches, the UWFI ends up winning probably the most important match for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. Nobuhiko Takada wins over Keiji Muto. For those of you who don't know, that's the Great Muta. And that it was like a complete surprise, because they should have ran, if they were doing all the booking, they should have run roughshod over the entire card. But instead, they lose all the other matches, and they win not only the most important match, but the IWGP title in the process. Takada would go on to lose the title in April of 1996, and that ended the feud with New Japan Pro Wrestling. They tried to recreate the angle again with another promotion, which was the War promotion, but it had very little success. And if anything, this whole question of did the NWO get ripped off by, or did the UWFI get ripped off by the NWO? The way this all plays out, this is a lot more like the WCW versus WWF angle from July of 2001 that happened in the WWF. Just by the way it all went down. I think it's much more similar than the whole NWO angle from WCW.
If you guys, just so you guys know, if you're interested in actually seeing this card, it is available on New Japan Pro Wrestling World.
Yes, sir.
Again, it is from October 9th, 1995, called Clash. You can go to our website, 20x20crew.com/podcast/NJPW for information on how to subscribe to NJPW World. It's totally worth it, and then you get this entire card. You are 100% correct. It is more reminiscent. Going through the notes, that's what I thought, and then I saw your notes here, where it's the same concept as the invasion angle, because the main company, the bigger company, especially because obviously the invasion angle, they own WCW, it was their own company, but WCW was now the outcasts. They were the smaller group, and WWF ran buckshots over them, and it's just Well, how do you get the other guys over if that happens? So it's the same concept here. It's New Japan completely destroys UWFI, and I don't see where you get comparisons really to the 1990s NWO invasion angle, if you will.
I think it's a case of the majority of the wrestling fans out there. They just it's like they either they don't listen well, or they just immediately chalk it up to, hey, that's what this is. Because let's face it, a lot of wrestling fans are casual wrestling fans these days, and they don't necessarily know about the UWF or other wrestling. I'm trying not to say that these are all WWE marks.
Right. Well, let's also look at it this way. It's not like the invasion angle is brand new,
No.
including in 1996.
Right, at the basis of it all, that's what this is. It's an invasion angle.
That's all it is,
and it's nothing new.
It's signing a guy to a big contract, and let's face facts, he didn't fully expect to nab him the way that he did.
Right.
Scott Hall was very dedicated to WWE. Neither one of those guys, if you go back to their comments on leaving, neither one of those guys wanted to necessarily leave.
They just wanted to be paid.
They want to get paid. They want to get paid more, work less, guaranteed money. That was the reason why they left. There was no bad blood. As a matter of fact, Kevin Nash didn't want to go back initially to WCW because look how he was treated. You know, that he couldn't keep a fucking gimmick going because they were all stupid.
Absolutely.
And then he comes to WWE. He's the Diesel character, and say what you want about him as Diesel, the fucking run that he had as champion, almost a year long. I think it was 51 weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was up there.
Yeah, it was almost a year, and I mean, he was definitely over. Scott Hall as Razor Ramon was for sure over.
Hell yeah.
So why would you leave? Well, you got to remember too. Again, I'm real quick here. You were paid when you worked. That's when you got paid. You're now going to work for a company that is funded by a billionaire, and you're being paid guaranteed money. Work less dates, get paid guaranteed money, and get paid more money. That's why you went. But you're absolutely right, though. When Eric Bischoff signed those guys, it was just like, oh shit, we got them. What do you do with them? And it wasn't like Eric Bischoff was this genius booker, because look at the signing of Hulk Hogan. What was it, 2 years prior when they signed him in '94?
2 years.
They didn't have shit for him.
No.
They did not have shit for Hogan. You made this big deal. We got Hogan, and then you give him the Dungeon of Doom. You know? and those amazing storyline angles that he worked there. So, again, it wasn't like he was this amazing matchmaker. To me, it is all very much too coincidental for it to fall into place. And it's not the exact same thing. It's not the exact same concept of the two, because it wasn't until many months later was like NWO was like a brand.
Yeah.
Because for so long it was like, what is the New World Order? What is it? It was just a thing. It was just a group of outlaws, essentially. And it wasn't until they continued to sign people to the group, because it was like, you know, week after week after week, it seemed, for a while, where a new member was happening. It was, all right, what do we do with this? It becomes its own entity. Unsuccessfully, but it becomes its own entity.
There's a few other things to consider here. You talk to the typical wrestling fan, and you bring up the NWO and all that. Immediately, Eric Bischoff is either a genius to them or a big dumbass for the way WCW folded. With that being said, this isn't the doing of one man. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that. You had multiple people booking. I think Kevin Sullivan was the one who was booking during the beginning of the NWO.
Yeah.
So he had a hand in getting that over. You had input from guys like Larry Zbyszko,
Yeah.
who, for those of you who don't know, Bischoff actually wanted to bring Scott Hall out, complete with music, out of the entrance that all the other wrestlers come out of, and Larry Zbyszko had to tell him, like, wait a minute. This guy's supposed to be an outsider, not part of the company. Why would he have his own music already? Why would he come out where the rest of the boys come out? Why don't you have him come out through the audience?
Right.
And then have him interrupt a match like he really doesn't belong there. And obviously the rest is history. You see how it played out. So there you go right there. That's proof positive that Bischoff didn't necessarily know exactly what he had.
Right.
He knew he had something, but he didn't know exactly what he had.
He had two great signees that he had no idea where to put them at.
Also, from the Japanese side of things, you got to remember, again, if you're not familiar, Takada was never like the equivalent of Hulk Hogan for the UWFI. He was mid-carder at best. You think of him as like Triple H when Triple H was the IC champ. That was kind of what Takada was for UWFI.
Okay.
So for him to win the IWGP title, that was nothing like the NWO. That was nothing like Hulk Hogan, who essentially came in and pretty much got the title right off the bat, you know?
Right.
Also, UWFI as a whole, whether they were part of an Invasion angle or not, there was no merch. NWO, all the fucking, like, one of the most popular t-shirts in the last fucking 30 years of pro wrestling. It's gotta still be, like, top 3. Gotta be. And then also, the UWI didn't start out hot or strong like the NWO did.
Right.
It was like they kept failing. They kept succeeding just enough to get by because of other issues, especially with their own roster. And then somehow they had no choice but to give up to their competitor and work with them. So, like, none of this is reminiscent of the NWO. And then obviously the easiest thing to take away from this is the UWFI was nowhere near as cool as what the NWO was. NWO was over like fucking wildfire, as opposed to UWFI, which was a struggling fucking company who couldn't keep half their fucking roster happy for one reason or another. So they left. It's like, what the fuck? It would be like Hall and Nash going to WCW, being part of the NWO for like 3 weeks, and be like, you know what? This isn't for me. I'm going back, and then just leave. Yeah, that would be the equivalent. As stupid as that sounds. So yeah, quite a bit of difference here between the two.
It is an interesting question, though. I mean, it's a fair question, but I don't see it. I don't see it because of the many differences. And again, you're absolutely right in the sense of, first of all, if I'm Eric Bischoff and I did see that, it wouldn't strike me up as immediately like, that's a good idea, because again, it never worked.
Yeah,
it never worked. So if I'm trying to figure out what the fuck to do with these guys, I'm not necessarily going to be like, it's going to work for us.
Yeah, why would I rip off a failure when I could rip off a success story?
So I don't buy in to the UWFI as being borrowed or stolen, if you will. As far as the idea, there were some similarities there for sure. But again, as I said earlier, the invasion angle is not new to the industry, and it wasn't new in 1996. So therefore, I don't buy it, because it was just another invasion angle, in this case done correctly.
what lends to the mythos of this question that we're talking about, the relationship that this supposedly has between wrestling fans. A lot of this you have to contribute at least a percentage of to Dave Meltzer. Because when Dave Meltzer first brought attention to this, he used the words Japanese style angle when he started talking about the NWO angle. So immediately it was like the rumors that get spread out there and all the bullshit that gets talked.
Dave Meltzer does it again, huh?
Yeah, you had all those Wrestling Observer readers, his fucking faithful, just take it as the gospel, which a lot of them do, and they just assumed, hey, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the, I guess, urban legend, if you will, behind this question comes from. And it didn't help that Dave Meltzer used that terminology. But you have to understand, and a lot of Wrestling Observer fans don't understand it, or I should say Dave Meltzer fans don't necessarily understand, is that the whole reason Meltzer got into the business he's into was because of non-American talent that was not working here in the States necessarily. The alternative to American pro wrestling. That's why he got in the business. So things like Japanese style angles and terminology like that, that's common to him, not necessarily everybody else. So he knows that. That's what he's confident in talking about. That's what he had to compare to, because that's his bread and butter. And obviously these days he covers a whole lot more than just the American alternative, but yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that. So he in really quick, in a nutshell, Dave Meltzer back then looked at the American wrestling market as a secondary market, not the not the end all be all, not the holy grail of professional wrestling.
And I think it should go without saying, no matter where you and I go with this podcast, no matter where anybody goes with the podcast or as a writer, as a reporter, ladies and gentlemen, you can't base everything you think about a certain topic off of one entity.
Right.
Dave Meltzer is like God in dirt sheets and wrestling reporting, and he is not. He is not that. And I'm not anti Dave Meltzer by any means. I follow what he says and all that stuff. But make your own fucking opinions and figure out what the hell he means by that.
Yeah.
Do the research like we did.
Do research. Jesus. It's not fucking hard.
It's like, hey, he said that, so, Dave Meltzer knows what he's talking about.
Must be true.
Must be true. I mean, oh my God. I get so sick and tired of hearing that. Like, oh, well, Meltzer reported this, so it's got to be true. Okay. Because he's right every single time, right? Like, he's probably right like 50% of the time, if that.
If that.
Like, that's, 500 is good in baseball, but not good when it comes to reporting. So, and again, I'm not here to insult Dave Meltzer. I'm not anti-Dave Meltzer. I know you're not much of a fan.
No, I am not.
To me, I mean, I'm so on the guy. But, it's just, when you hear a large amount of people buying into shit like that, it gets frustrating. But
absolutely. And with that, I think we're going to take a break. We've covered a lot of information already. And when we come back, we're going to talk more NWO, less UWF. Fair enough?
Too sweet.
All right. Hang in there, folks. We'll be right back. This episode of the 20x20 Crew is sponsored by Amazon Prime. Sign up for a free 30-day trial and you get instant access to thousands of movies and television episodes. You get to borrow Kindle ebooks. You also get unlimited free 2-day shipping with no minimum order size. You don't have to purchase. You can cancel anytime and still show the 20x20 crew some love. You can sign up for Amazon Prime through the 20x20 crew by visiting our website at 20x20crew.com/podcast/Amazon. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the support. And now let's get back to the show.
Completely maul his opponent, Steve Dahl.
Well, you know, Steve Dahl was trying to get an offensive going.
Wait a minute.
But
what the hell is going on here?
But the Mauler, well, he just got reversed right there. The Mauler runs him down. What are you talking about?
Look here.
Well, what the hell?
Wait a minute.
Somebody give me a mic. What's with this?
Wait a minute. Wait, we need security here. I have no idea.
Hey.
Wait a minute. I can't believe it. I can't believe what I'm seeing.
You people.
What's with him here?
You know who I am. But you don't know why I'm here.
Are we going to get security here?
Where is Billionaire Ted? Where is the Nacho Man? That punk can't even get in the building. Me, I go wherever I want, whenever I want.
Listen, we need somebody to talk to.
And where, oh where, is Scheme Gene? 'Cause I got a scoop for you. When that Ken doll lookalike, when that weatherman wannabe comes out here later tonight, I got a challenge for him, for Billionaire Ted, for the Nacho Man, and for anybody else in WCW. Hey, you want to go to war? You want a war? You're going to get one. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, as always, for supporting the show. We have bills like everybody else. And we thank you for listening. And if you choose to support us otherwise, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
As always, we still have wrestling on in the background as we record, and we are now tuned into the infamous NWO Sold Out pay-per-view.
Well, this is the 98 one.
Oh, this is the 98 one. Sorry. Okay.
I can turn on the 97 one.
No, you're okay.
This is WCW and NWO presents.
Well,
Sold Out.
Yeah, sponsored by Snickers.
I think every WCW pay-per-view in '98 was sponsored by Snickers.
As we see the Flock with Raven come to the ring. Who they're facing? I'm not sure.
I'm assuming it's Benoit, because
is it Benoit?
Was it Lodi had a Benoit?
Oh yeah, Benoit. Something is over. Oh, it is over.
I'm trying to remember all these names. I know one guy's like Scotty Riggs.
Yeah, Scotty Riggs.
Van Hammer, the guy with like the mesh.
The mesh,
shirt.
yeah.
Scotty Riggs. Oh, that's
Scotty
Stevie Richards.
Scotty Riggs is the eye patch.
Yeah, I didn't see Stevie Richards. Wait, that's not Stevie Richards.
No, that's not Stevie.
Okay, so I'm wrong. The guy with the who's that guy?
This is Van Hammer with the mesh. You're right.
Yeah.
There's Lodi with the
goggles.
The goggles.
Billy Kidman or just Kidman.
I'm not sure who the other fucking dude is.
First I thought it was Stevie Richards, and then I saw the tattoo. I don't know what's going on. I love the Flock. You know what I loved was, I know you're not a big gamer, but the WCW NWO Thunder on PlayStation, you had, your characters would have, like, you could set their faction, so it'll say WCW, NWO Black and White, NWO Wolfpack, the Four Horsemen, and the Flock. And their attire would be based off of what faction you pick on them.
Okay.
So, like, it was just funny for me to, like, have, like, characters in Flock, because, like, they'd be wearing, like, rugged, like, shirts and just it was stupid, but it was fun. You know, gotta keep in mind it was like '98 too when this came out on PlayStation. But it was pretty cool. I love the Flock. Yeah, I look at it now. I was like, even now it's an interesting concept, but like there's no star power.
No.
This faction besides Raven, who got treated like shit in WCW anyways.
Quite honestly, I think the closest thing we have these days that works is the Skulk in Evolve.
Oh, I love the Skulk.
Oh yeah, it is Benoit coming out.
He has a weird walk.
He does. It's all the fucking Hindu squats he does.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell him that, though. I'm afraid you'll hurt me.
Good Lord.
Don't get gassed, Raven. Do not get gassed. Like, if I ever had a Benoit match, I think I would just, like, run, like, the entire week before. Like, just nonstop run. Run for, like, as long as, like, my body would, and then just sleep for the rest. Like, just
fucking Forrest Gump run?
Yeah, just Forrest Gump run. I'm tired. I think I'm gonna go home now.
Gotta fight Benoit in the morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back and we're still talking turkey about the NWO. We just covered all the UWF history and how that relates or doesn't relate to the whole story behind the NWO.
Yep.
Now, for me, I just want to pick your brain, if that's okay with you.
Pick away.
Because you and I experienced this at different times in our lives.
Right.
So, and again, this is the first time we've covered it on the show.
Right.
So, I got a couple questions for you. Tony Schiavone, for sure, out of all of them, or out of most of the people who did color commentary for WCW, he often says that he was kept in the dark about a lot of stuff. I know I was listening to him one time, and he was talking about Terry Taylor, and how Terry Taylor was at gorilla position, and he's supposed to be cluing in Tony Schiavone into some of the things he should be discussing while he's commentating, and Schiavone would do it out of habit or because he was trying to be good at his job.
Right.
And then he was waiting for Terry Taylor to like feed him in some more information, and Terry Taylor would be repeating what Schiavone just said because Terry Taylor was too busy paying attention to other shit in the background or in the gorilla position because the company was so fucked up and disorganized. But the announcers for the Nitro on May 27th of 1996 was the first appearance of Scott Hall. The announcers played it like a shoot. They played it like they didn't know what was going on, who this guy was. And so I've always wanted to ask you, how beneficial do you think is it to let the talent and or commentary know about what's going to go on ahead of time, or not let them know ahead of time?
I don't think there's really like a concrete answer to this because the cliche answer is it depends on the commentator. You got a guy like Michael Cole. I tell him every single thing he needs to say. Do not let him ad-lib anything because it's Michael Cole and he sucks.
He would still fuck up.
He would still fuck up, but yeah. A guy like Tony Schiavone, I'm not saying he's the greatest commentator in the world, but a guy like Tony Schiavone, I think made it work because let's face facts. He was such a trooper for WCW for so long. You know, even beyond the NWO era, you know, especially the Vince Russo era, I learned that Tony Schiavone was very good at keeping composure and trying to do as much damage control as possible when things happened that weren't supposed to happen per se. That's obviously in hindsight. Hindsight's always 20/20. But with something like this, Eric Bischoff wants Scott Hall to come out with theme music. Larry Zbyszko says, hey, he should come out of the audience. And if you really like think about it, like if you really go back and to when it happened, like Larry Zbyszko was the one that played the surprise guy, and Tony Schiavone was just like, "Hey, what the fuck is this? Like,
Yeah.
you know, what's happening here?" Everything about WCW at that time and the NWO was real based. You know, Eric Bischoff said it in so many interviews. WWE was gimmick based. They wanted to be real. You want to do something real. Think of anything that is happening in the world that's real, and that's whether it's good or bad, but it's happening live and on the spot. Your people on camera are there to now react to it at some point. You know, let's say you're on the scene doing a weather report, and all of a sudden there's a giant twister happening behind you. How do you react to that? You know, we weren't expecting it, but now it's there. So you have Scott Hall come in and have this commentator that's kind of like, what's happening kind of thing. As a fan, I'm just as confused, because sometimes when you know what's happening, you now have to act. And again, it's, you know, this is where we say Michael Cole would fuck it up, because it would be like, oh my God, it's Scott Hall. What is he doing here? Like, he's clearly not surprised by it. Like when AJ Styles, for example, when he made his first appearance at the Royal Rumble, like, it was totally ruined by everything Michael Cole was saying. Like, he was building up this guy as if he had notes written down verbatim, and it was like, well, how did you know he was there, Michael Cole? You know, you're supposed to make it, as a commentator, you're supposed to make the product as believable as you can. So the less you know, the better in this situation, because it's supposed to be what we talked about last week, and that's shock value. It's supposed to be that. And if your commentator is professional enough to be like, all right, Scott Hall's here, let's run with it, but still has no idea what's going on, as a fan, I'm listening to it, and it's like, well, why is Scott Hall here? What's going on? Why is he here? So I'm a fan of it, but again, it's just like so many other things. It's you gotta have the right personnel there, and I truly feel, especially in hindsight, that Tony Schiavone was that guy that be like, all right, this is what we're doing, let's do it.
Speaking of color commentating, Eric Bischoff had been quoted as saying the reason he switched up announcers for Nitro was to keep it fresh. He felt the idea of having just the same two guys for an entire 2 or 3 hour telecast would just get boring to the audience listening.
Mm.
Do you agree with him? Do you disagree with him? Did you have any favorites on Nitro?
I think I'm in the minority. I was always a Mike Tenay fan. I learned in my earlier years that it's like this guy knew wrestling. And
yeah, him and to a lesser extent Scott Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Scott Hudson was kind of like the bootleg Mike Tenay,
yeah,
if you will. But yeah, no, I found myself enjoying Mike Tenay because he knew all he was like the technical wrestling equivalent of a color commentator.
If I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me correctly, he was brought in initially as the cruiserweight guy.
Yeah, just to announce for
cruiserweights. But like, yeah, it was. He just had like this great like wrestling knowledge. But you know what? I really dug WCW commentators though. I know Bobby Heenan has gone on record saying he didn't necessarily care for his time in WCW, but you know what? I loved his commentary. You know, Dusty Rhodes, I thought was a nice commentary. Larry Zbyszko was so. I mean, he was good, especially listening to it now. You and I were a few weeks ago, before recording, we were listening to one of the episodes of Nitro. And some of the old school comments that he said. It's like, holy shit. just things that would be fresh in 2018 or 2019 would be frowned upon.
Oh, yeah.
He would have a field day on that. But, yeah, I always enjoyed it. So does it keep it fresh? It depends on who you're asking. I wouldn't say so much keeping it fresh, but you had, especially before Thunder, you had one TV show and you had a good amount of commentators that could do the job well. You know, why not mix it up in that sense? Again, I guess that's keeping it fresh, but if it was Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan, you know, for the most part, I would still be okay with that because they were a good tandem together. Again, I always flocked more towards Mike Tenay, but he wasn't a main commentator for WCW. But I enjoyed his commentary. I really enjoyed most guys. I'm not gonna say everybody's, but for the most part, WCW was just good all around as far as commentating to begin with.
I can't say I'm necessarily a fan of the switch up. Like, it didn't really affect me because growing up, there never was a switch up.
Right.
It was just you got the same set of guys and that was it. So no matter how long the program was that you were watching, whether it be an hour's worth of TV or a couple hours of pay-per-view, whatever.
So, and even today's standards, it's the same concept. You might get special guests in certain matches, but it's the same thing.
You and I were watching Raw earlier.
Oh God, yeah.
And I was telling Matt, Cardinal sin in wrestling commentating. You never have a 3-person team ever. It's too much. It's too much, and too much shit can go wrong. And right now, Raw has Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and Renee Young.
And they're all terrible. They're all having side conversations, and they have their own puns.
It's ridiculous.
SmackDown's not any better. I don't know what they see in Corey Graves. I really don't. Like, I remember watching an episode of, I don't know if it was 30 for 30 or one of those ESPN shows, and they were doing the NXT episode, and they had Corey Graves and all the concussions, and it was cool because, like, at the time I felt it was cool because Triple H was like, "Hey, you can't wrestle anymore. We're not gonna fire you," because that was what they were building on. Like, I'm not gonna have a job. We're not gonna fire you. We're gonna give you this new job. You're gonna be a commentator. I was like, oh, how nice of them, and that's cool. And it's like, fuck, they should have fired his ass because he's just bad. He's not a good. He's supposed to be this heel commentator, and he absolutely blows at it.
I couldn't agree more. He
tries too hard.
He does. That's what it is, man. He tries too hard.
Some guys just don't have it in them to be a bad guy. And, I mean, I hate you, Corey Graves, but not because you're a good heel. It's because you just annoy the shit out of me. You make me not want to watch it even more. And that sucks because I'm actually trying to give him a shot, and I got more enjoyment watching it while recording because I didn't have to listen to your shitty commentary. So.
Tell me how you really feel, Matt. Going back to that Nitro, that first Nitro where Scott Hall appears, May 27th of 96.
Yep.
Is there anything you would do different?
For that night? No. Well, the only thing I would maybe do different is maybe help out Scott Hall a little bit in what to say. Practice his delivery a little bit better. Because when you edit it, it sounds really good. But when you watch it in its entirety, it's really slow delivery.
Yeah,
you know the where is Sting? I don't know. He's in the back somewhere. You know, like I would. You know, I like it when guys are able to, you know, say their own lines and, you know, kind of create their own, you know, their own segments. But again, you are running a big time show here on national television. it might be a good idea to be like, hey, Scott, what do you got for us tonight? You know, have him run it by you, be like, all right, that's good, but, you know, maybe tweak it here or there, just so it has more effect. So I liked what he said. I liked the, you know, you want a war, you're going to get one. That was great. But the lead up to it was, you know, the where? Oh, where?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't know. I don't know where you're going with this. You know, but there's other good parts. You know, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here.
I always laugh at the part where he's mentioning Mean Gene.
Yeah.
Where is Scheme Gene? Do I have a scoop for him? And I'm like, holy fuck! Could you just say it already? Yeah, there was some cool shit he said, but you're right. Like, someone should have produced him a little more. At least ran it by him in the back.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe change this, maybe don't say this.
Yeah. Just you know, your appearance is going to be enough. You know, it's going to get people buzzing. You know, say a little bit and be
done with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
Here's an interesting question that I've never picked your brain about. I had to think back. So, everybody during that time wanted to know who the fucking third man was, myself included.
Yeah.
It was the talk of the wrestling world. Who's the third man? Who's the third man? We all know now, well, you should know, the original person that was supposed to be, and it wasn't Hulk Hogan, it was supposed to be Sting.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, logically, there was sense to that decision.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know it was Hulk Hogan. But there were a lot of names thrown out there. And I bring this up to kind of take shot at Meltzer. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
But I do have a list, and I want your honest to God reaction, okay? So I'm going to name them off very slowly. And you can laugh, you can cry, you can call me out on them, however you want.
Okay.
But, so, here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Roddy Piper.
At that point in his career, absolutely not.
Unbelievable to you, or?
You gotta have a buzz. There's no buzz.
Okay.
For Roddy Piper. All due respect, he's a legend, but 96, who cares?
The British Bulldog.
A little bit better, in my opinion, but again, there's no buzz there. Who cares?
Isaac Yankem.
The fucking dentist?
The dentist.
Now we're talking WCW here.
Keep in mind, these are all legit rumors that were put out there.
These are yeah.
Yes.
Way to go, Meltzer. Isaac Yankem.
Brian Clark.
No. Just no. Nobody even knows who he is.
Crush.
What was Crush doing? I think he was an NOD at the time, wasn't he?
Probably, yeah.
Or I don't know. No Crush.
Lex Luger.
Lex Luger's believable, unfortunately. I don't like it. In 1996, I don't like it.
Okay.
You know, 23 years later, or close to it, 22 and a half years later, I still don't like it. But Lex Luger's believable because he's a big name in WCW. He's a babyface. He could be the third guy.
Okay. King Mabel.
No. I'm sorry, Mabel, but no. Big Biz, whatever you want to call yourself.
Tatanka.
Why? Why is that even?
I believe his name was mentioned originally, if I remember correctly, because I don't think he had a much TV time for the WWF at that point.
This was definitely post this 2-year undefeated streak, right?
Yeah. And so everybody thought, well, not everybody, but
he's gonna jump ship.
He's gonna jump ship.
People are gonna give a shit about it. All right.
And then lastly, probably the most interesting one here, Bret the Hitman Hart.
Can you imagine Bret Hart leaving on his own? no screw job, and then does this angle.
I think it would have been. I think it would have got a really big reaction, but I still don't know that it would be as big as Hulk Hogan.
That's fair, but I do want to say this point though, and I know you and I are going to talk about this in a second here, that a guy like Bret Hart brings more longevity to the heel faction than Hogan ever could.
I wholeheartedly agree. It definitely would change the entire dynamic of the NWO.
Because look at it this way too, Bret Hart, even though he's not as big of a name as Hulk Hogan, not arguing that point at all, Bret Hart is, especially in 1996, is still the face of WWF.
Yeah.
If he leaves, if he throws that contract back at Vince, say, hey, I'm done, and goes to WCW and does this, I mean, you got, like, that is more of a slap in the face than Hogan, because, first of all, Hogan's been with WCW for 2 years at this point, and then, like, Bret Hart, like, that was the guy. That was their guy. That was, that would be like, taking your top guy in any company and having him join the opposition. Mm-hmm. It's a big fucking deal in that sense too. In the sense that you crumbled one company and completely flourished another company all in one night.
Now, you mentioned obviously it would bring more longevity to the NWO, and again, it would drastically change the impact.
Right.
Concerning Sting, how do you feel about Sting compared to Bret Hart? Do you think it's a very similar situation? Do they have is the fan reaction the same? How would you feel if it actually was Sting instead of Hogan?
So how I would rate it as far as the Bash at the Beach 1996 fan reaction?
Yes.
Hogan number 1, Bret Hart number 2, Sting number 3.
Really?
However, I will say this: Sting, out of those 3 guys, is the best option for the NWO. And I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, they're going to think of me crazy here, but Hulk Hogan is the absolute worst thing to happen to the NWO. And even if you're a Hogan fanboy, and I know people out there listening are Hogan fanboys, and that's fine, Hogan, just like every other time Hogan does anything, Hogan does for Hogan. When you have a faction like the NWO, you have, for lack of better terms, you have to be all in for the cause. Hogan's never going to be for the cause of anything besides himself. Just like the situation going on right now. He's not apologetic for what he did. He just wants to be back because he wants to be back.
He wants to be back.
That's it. Anyways, Sting is, out of those 3 guys, he's the only guy that has 0 WWF affiliation. And you listen to Scott Hall, you listen to Kevin Nash, both of those guys said it had to be a WWE guy. That's what made it effective. And I agree with that for that June pay-per-view at Bash at the Beach. I agree with that just for that one night. The overall process of the NWO, because Sting is the guy that will help get that whole name over, even if it means sacrificing himself. You got to remember, Sting was the ultimate baby. He was one of the biggest baby faces, maybe behind Hogan at the time. But again, if you go back to those interviews, from '96, Hogan, nobody gave a shit about Hogan anymore. Hulkamania was a joke. It was mediocre. It was watered down. They didn't have anything for him. Hogan didn't join the NWO, and this came out of his mouth. He didn't join the NWO because he thought it was a cool thing. He joined the NWO because Hulkamania was dead.
Yeah.
This was the perfect time to kill it officially. All he did was he pulled the plug on life support for Hulkamania. It wasn't like it was a big move for him. He just, fuck it. What else is there doing? I'm not making money off Hulkamania shirts anymore. So why not change the character? Sting doesn't have that mentality. And he's proven that time and time again. He is a company guy. That's why he stuck around with that company all the way until it sank.
Yeah.
He stayed on the Titanic. He died with it. And he would be that guy that would get this idea over. He would be the guy that when you brought in younger talent like a Paul White, he wouldn't overshadow them with, hey, I got to be in the spotlight, not this guy. You know, he would get the younger talent over because he was accustomed to that, because that guys like Ric Flair did that to him. Get these young cats over because there has to be a future. This is the perfect opportunity to do that. Bret Hart, I want to say, would do the same thing, but Bret Hart's also very egotistical in his own right and can be a very difficult person to deal with in his own right, and we've seen that during his time in WWE. You know, especially when you start dealing with guys like Hall and Nash, who he wasn't necessarily too fond of, and their antics. So I don't know if that mesh would if they would mesh well. But Sting was a WCW guy, and the NWO was the biggest thing to happen. It for WCW at that time, or really any time in the 90s especially. And it's fitting that the first major rival that they had, that faction had, was Sting. He was going to get him over, whether he was with them or against them. And change my mind on that one. I'm the change my mind guy. Change my mind. Sting, the longevity of the NWO, we're not talking about shock value anymore. The shock value is great, but as we talked about on the show before, it goes away. What do you do with it next? We saw what Hogan did with it. He took it, he ran with it to keep his name on top. Nothing more, nothing less. When he started going downhill, he wanted out. You know, he wasn't involved in all the other bullshit that came with it, because it didn't help his character. It didn't help his gimmick. Sting would have probably made sure that didn't happen, but if it did, because he can only have so much control, if it did, he would, I guarantee you, he would ride it to the very end and do everything he could in his power to get the NWO to where it was supposed to be. And with that kind of leadership, the NWO would have been much more successful.
The NWO would have been much more akin to what the Bullet Club is today, because of that type of longevity. And again, we see it with our own eyes here. With the Bullet Club, you have a bunch of guys who are willing to help each other get over.
Yeah. As
opposed to, a few that are just egotistical and have to have it their way. I think you're absolutely right about that part. Sting as the third man, for me, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he's super WCW.
Yeah.
So why not have him betray WCW? I think it would have got a very similar reaction to Hogan, but I still don't know if it would have been as big as to what happened with Hogan.
For that night?
For that night.
Yeah, I don't think I wholeheartedly agree that Hogan, for the shock value, that was your biggest shocker. And there's I don't think anybody could touch that.
What I would have liked to happen, but it would never happen in a million years, even today. I would have loved for Hogan to come out like he did, and then turn on Savage like he did, but then you have Hall and Nash look puzzled like, what the fuck are you doing? You're not our third guy.
Yeah.
And that's when you bring Sting out. And then have Sting join the NWO. And then leave Hogan, without a faction.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, that would never happen in a million years because of Hogan and how he is.
If you run with that, let's say you ran with that, you still kill two birds with one stone there, because, and yeah, I know that's the derogatory term nowadays. but Hogan does that. He turns on Savage. He doesn't join the NWO because of everything you said. It's not that like Hogan just didn't do a heelish thing. So now he doesn't have a faction, but he's also not the good guy that we all thought he was. You didn't have to join the NWO and become Hollywood Hogan to change your gimmick. You're Hogan. You have creative control. You do whatever I mean, again, Sting was the backup plan anyways. I mean, for those who don't know, Hulk Hogan spent most of Bash at the Beach at his buddy's house in Daytona.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'll let you know what I decide.
Yeah, because he wasn't sure.
He wasn't sure. And then he comes out. Hall and Nash don't know what's going on. They don't know if he's gonna do the job or not. So that look of shock on her face is legit shock. and ladies and gentlemen, I get it. Hulk Hogan's a big name. He got wrestling out of carnivals and all that bullshit. That's fine. Is that the guy you want to do business with? I don't. Especially if you got this beautiful thing that is on the verge of breaking through and becoming the next big thing. And it's like, well, we gotta wait on fucking, Princess over here decide what he wants to do, and everything goes through him, and it's like it doesn't work for the long run, and that's why the NWO by 1998 is essentially a dying breed.
I have another little bit of fantasy booking here for you. Let's play a little role reversal.
All right.
With Hogan and Sting turning heel.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what would happen in terms of the overall impact of the situation, that is the NWO, if Sting was the third man, but Hogan later came on board as part of the NWO? And when I say that, you can make him NWO. You can make him part of the original NWO. You can make him part of the Wolfpack. Whatever you want to do.
Basically, he takes the role of what Sting took. If you look at 97.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I kind of don't want Hogan in there because my biggest fear is the creative control. The creative control that he has. He could just. I don't want him part of that. I don't want him even rivaling against them because what we're gonna get is UWFI versus New Japan. Where it's just like, hey, Sting can't beat me, brother. Like, I gotta get over on Sting. And it's like, come on, Hulk. You promised you wouldn't do this. Oh, brother, I changed my mind, brother. And so,
such an uncanny Hogan.
He's never done that before. No, I kind of want him as far away from the NWO as possible because, again, Hulk Hogan took the NWO name just to revitalize his career. That is all he did for that group. Did it help sell T-shirts? You bet it did. But again, it's all part of get Hogan over. Get Hogan over first. It's like a championship-winning team, but you got to pass the ball to Hogan all the time. Hogan's got to be the one that scores the game-winning shot. Hogan's got to be the one that is in the spotlight. Hogan's got to be the one with the championship belt. Anybody else, and Hogan's not happy. And that's a problem.
With that being said, if Sting was still the third man, how plausible would it have been to have that version of the NWO, with Sting as the third guy, face off against a WCW roster of a new generation of Hulkamaniacs? Like, what if Hogan had not been the third guy and he takes up the helm for WCW and kind of converts them to like Team Hulkamaniac? Would it have done anything for you? Would you have changed your mind about what you just said? Or do you think Hogan still pulls his creative control card and ruins it all?
I think it still gets ruined because of the fact of where he fits in it, and more likely it's going to be for the World Heavyweight title, and more likely it's going to be him holding on to that title. If he's like in a managerial role, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because I could see him being like, hey, it's just not your time, brother. Like, you'll have your time. He's more, I think he'd be more accepting to, hey, like, you guys can't win every single match. Because if it's Hogan versus NWO, guess who's going to win 90% of the time? It's going to be Hogan. It could be Hogan versus 20 members of the NWO, Hogan's gonna win.
Okay.
That's Hogan. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. But that's Hogan in a nutshell. Hogan with his a group of upcomers, upstarters, or just a group in general. Like, let's say he hooked up with DDP because DDP was a major rival of the NWO. He grabbed a Booker T.
Okay.
Maybe a Chris Benoit or something like that. Who knows? And said, hey, we're going after these guys. These guys are running. You guys are running around destroying, our company. We got to take it back. I think it works better that way. But again, I still would rather have him doing something else, anything else. I would honestly, if I owned the company and I was stuck with him on my contract, I would pay him, the millions of dollars I paid him to fucking clean the bathrooms or something. Like, I want you doing nothing. Do nothing. But in reality, yeah, it could work in that sense. But anytime that Hogan is involved in anything, it becomes very, very troubling and very uncomfortable because of the monster that he is. And Hollywood does not rule, as his T-shirt says.
I know a few guys who would beg to differ with you.
Well, let me tell you something, bro.
Thinking back to the actual NWO roster,
yeah,
from start to finish,
right.
I know there's a lot of fat there that you need to trim. Besides the obvious in Virgil or Vincent, whatever you want to call him.
What are you talking about? He's like the best guy.
Was there someone or a few that like you particularly had beef with being NWO? Like you just could not stand that they were a part of the NWO?
I mean, where do you begin with that one? There's a few, and they're not necessarily fat as far as the company is concerned, but just ironically, the guy that we talked about when we first started talking about the third member here, and that's Bret Hart. Bret Hart, I mean, obviously this is 1997, this is post Screwjob. Why the fuck was he even there?
Yeah, it didn't make sense. And what made it even worse for me was he was supposedly affiliated with the NWO, but like he never fucking wore any of the shit.
Yeah.
Never. Not even once.
Yeah.
Even with the Bullet Club guys, like they're all of the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
But they all have their own individualism within that, so they always come to the ring a little bit different. But at some point or another, they do sport the Bullet Club logo.
Yeah.
And Bret Hart was having none of that shit. It's like, okay, I guess he's NWO. He doesn't seem like he wants to be, but... So yeah, that was always a turnoff for me.
I mean, you got guys like The Disciple, Bruce Beefcake in WWE. I forget his real name. I mean, he had absolutely no business being in the NWO besides the fact that he was Hogan's buddy. The other stupid ones, DiBiase.
Yeah, for me,
what's the point?
Yeah. Even Bischoff agreed with that one. Like, he jumped the shark with that one. Because he was like, he didn't even have the temperament.
Yeah.
He just didn't. And he stuck out like a sore thumb from the beginning.
I'm a fan of his in-ring work, but Conan was another guy that...
You know what?
Didn't fit in the NWO.
I was never that big on the NWO Wolfpack. Because I think it definitely distilled and watered down what was supposed to be the Wolfpack. So having him as part of that, like, it didn't work for me. But I will say, the lineup that they had for War Games, what was that, 97?
Yeah.
Where they killed off the Horsemen?
Right.
Conan was one of them.
Yeah.
And that match, that lineup of guys completely worked for me. I fucking loved every minute of it.
I mean, I know there's one that you're gonna throw out right away, but he wasn't. He was part of like the Silver You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about good old Double J.
Oh, Jesus.
He was a member of the NWO.
Well, he was also a member of the Bullet Club, too.
Oh, yeah, don't remind me.
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
It does. Absolutely does. Unfortunately.
Rick Rude, another guy that didn't really do anything for the NWO, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, not really, because he wasn't wrestling.
Yeah, he wasn't wrestling at the time. And, like, the way that DX essentially treated his ass anyways when he left, it was just like, you're not wanted anywhere. Obviously, guys like Horace Hogan, Stevie Ray.
Oh God, neither one of them either.
Yeah, I mean, there's other guys. There's other guys that I'm looking at the list, and I forgot were even in the NWO. I forgot like Disco Inferno was technically in there. Wasn't he Wolfpack?
Yeah.
Disco Inferno.
Fucking horrible shit.
Yeah, it just became a a not so who's who, I should say. But but then they dropped the ball with some guys like the Giant. Giant was a great addition to the NWO. That's exactly who you want on your team, and they threw him out.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Do you know the reason why?
No, I don't.
I'm assuming Hogan has something to do with it because he was fucking over.
Yeah.
He was too over. He was supposed to be the next guy.
Well,
big thing.
you know he likes to fight big guys. So
Yeah.
I mean, it only made sense to like want to fight the biggest guy all the time.
I guess. But there's other guys that were kind of, for me, especially the younger generation. He was synonymous with NWO, and that was guys like Scott Norton, who, although was never a huge factor.
Vicious and delicious.
And the thing is, I'm not a huge Buff Bagwell fan, but ever since I started talking to you about that, I went back and watched their matches, watched them together.
I'm telling you, man.
I give you that. I give you it. It works.
Worked.
Yeah, it does work.
Again, I am also not a big Buff Bagwell fan.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, Vicious and Delicious worked, man. Holy fuck.
I don't know why. You'll probably be disappointed in me in this one, but I didn't mind Lex Luger and the Wolfpack.
Why? What is wrong with you?
I don't know. It kind of
You must still be sick.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I didn't say I loved it.
Man.
But I didn't. I guess a part of it was because I was just somewhat happy to see Sting and Luger on the same page again. Because being such a Sting fan and watching them, especially in 95, 96, you got to see that tandem together. It was cool to see them on the same team. I guess maybe that was the only reason why. And even Conan, for whatever reason, fit better in that faction than they did in NWO. But I agree with you what you said with the War Games match. But yeah, there's some cool additions though to it as well. I mean, Kurt Hennig was obviously a huge part of that.
Again, part of the War Games.
War Games.
Yeah. Oh man.
I mean, he was the reason why he turned on the Horsemen that night. So, there's definitely some good here, but like, there's a lot of wasted potential in the talent roster.
Yeah, absolutely.
You go to the Bullet Club, and again, we do the Bullet Club comparison because if you ask those guys, a lot of it was inspired by the NWO. It's an invasion angle.
Yeah.
When it first came out, Gaijin.
They were fucking too sweetened. Well, they still too sweetened in New Japan.
They're still too sweetened. But you look at where it started. Bad Luck Fale, Carl Anderson, Prince Devitt, and then Tama Tonga. And where it's gone now, only I would say AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes came into the group with a big name.
Yeah.
And some of you would be like, oh well, no, well they had Kenny Omega, they had the Young Bucks. They weren't big.
No, they weren't big at
names. Kenny Omega was a junior heavyweight trying to find his name. He had this cleaner gimmick. They brought him in. He was a junior heavyweight. And then he does the shocking turn on AJ Styles. That's what got him over.
Sure.
The Young Bucks, they were brought in, I believe, by Anderson, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
And it was just one of those things where it's like, do what you guys are doing, but do it here. And he guaranteed them it'll work, and it worked. It wasn't one of those things where it's like they, hey, we're vice presidents of a company. Like, these guys were actually struggling to find a home. They were independent stars trying to get themselves a name, and for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was one of those things like situations that the Rockers had in the early days of WWE, where it was just like, you guys are punks. You guys are punks, and we want nothing to do with you. And it's kind of like, what the fuck did we do? Because everywhere they went, it was a bad reputation. I'm not saying that they were perfect in the situation, but it almost seemed as if everywhere they went, bullshit came with it. And they were a perfect fit for the Bullet Club, I guess. Because it certainly worked. Adam Page, another guy. Adam Page was a guy that went from faction to faction in Ring of Honor. Couldn't find a fucking thing to do. Joins the Bullet Club. Becomes a huge success. Marty Scurll. Another example. A guy who found his name in England. Rev Pro being one of them. Known for a rivalry with another junior heavyweight in Will Ospreay. That's about it. That's about all I knew of him when he came to Ring of Honor. Has a successful run as television champion, to everyone's surprise. And then Kenny Omega endorses him and puts him in the Bullet Club. And it's like, oh shit. And things got real with him. So the point I'm trying to make is they developed their talent. Whether they became junior heavyweight champion or tag team champions or world champions or just being legit names in whatever company they're competing in, they became a legit force to be reckoned with. When you join the Bullet Club, and we're seeing now with Jay White even more now, where if you join the Bullet Club, you have this opportunity to get big. And that's what a good faction does. A faction's not supposed to be as strong as their leader. It should be as strong as your weakest link. And if your weakest link is, somebody like, I might sound shitty here, but someone like Tonga Loa, you ain't doing so bad.
No, not at all.
Because that's a hell of a worker. I'm not including Gato or Jado in that, by the way. But, that's where the NWO lacked. And again, I'm not saying Sting would have fixed the problems, because WCW had a lot of fucking problems when it came to booking. But, beyond Hogan. But Hulk Hogan will never have that mentality. Hey, we got this Buff Bagwell guy. Like, what's he doing? We got to get him over.
Yeah.
I got my belt. You guys do whatever the fuck you want to do. I'm gonna leave. I'm not even gonna be at the arena. I'm not saying that's what happened, but he basically just didn't give a fuck, and that's why anything fails. Again, you're as strong as your weakest link, and you look at this roster. There's a shit ton of weak links on here.
Oh yeah,
and that's the problem.
Was there anyone? So let's go with the premise that it wasn't Hogan, it was Sting or Bret Hart as the third man. Okay.
Okay, fair.
With that being said, was there anyone on the WCW roster that didn't end up being NWO that you would have liked to have seen the WCW push homegrown, who wasn't from the WWE, and elevate by way of the NWO?
I'm watching them right now. I think what Booker T lacked was character. I'm watching Booker T, by the way, for those who can't see me right now. I'm watching Booker T, and the one thing he had was raw talent. One thing he lacked was character, and especially in a era that thrived on characters more than physical abilities. And Booker T, with a little more edge to him, definitely works. Especially, you go look at, I think it was 97 or 98 when you had that Best of 7 series with Chris Benoit.
Oh, man. I think it was 98.
98? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine him doing that same Best of 7 series, but him representing the NWO. A little more edge, a little more heelish tactics. Still the same great wrestling ability. You're still going to get that same type of 7 matches, but now you have to worry about, is Booker T going to go? What is he going to do? Is he? Are you going to get heelish tactics? How is Chris Benoit going to overcome that? Storytelling like that. It's not just based off of great wrestling, which I'm okay with all day long. But as far as if we're talking about 1998 professional wrestling, the fans of any, whether it's WCW or WWF, we'll stick with those two for now, they want storytelling as well. That works tenfold for them, in my opinion. Booker T was not that he needed the NWO. Obviously, he had a successful career without it. But with the NWO, especially with a Sting or a legit person that gives a shit about upcoming homegrown talent, I think he's the right guy.
I think with Sting being in the NWO, I think it would have been totally doable to keep Booker T Team WCW, but elevate him to a higher status on that team. Have him become either a high mid-carder or a main eventer.
That's true too.
Yeah, and let him like, he's got the raw talent. Let him do it. Get him in there with someone who's gonna help him grow and help put him over. I think you have the same result happen, just as part of Team WCW as opposed to Team NWO.
Instead of waiting to 2000 to finally give him the belt.
Yeah, right.
Wasn't his first title reign at Bash of the Beach 2000 during the infamous Hogan Russo situation? What a way to win his first title, huh?
Yep. That's how he got the shot.
That's how he got the shot.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing tonight?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
WCW.
Fuck.
What about you, though? What do you like as far as NWO? I'll ask you the same question.
Who should have been in there that wasn't?
Mm-hmm.
That was WCW. And I guess I feel the same way. I should include ECW too. Like, they had to be strictly WCW, not ECW or WWF. I think if Kevin Sullivan was part of the NWO, it would have changed the dynamics between them and the Horsemen. Only because of what happened between him and Chris Benoit. But I think it would have made for some really great television.
Yeah.
And if they had worked it out to where they had a War Games closer to the time where all that shit was going on between them two, and to have Sullivan part of Team NWO during that time, I think it would have escalated so fucking much, and we would have got to see something as close to a shoot as possible without it being a complete shoot, and it would have been great. Much more than we got to see. You have all the cruiserweights that came in, and besides Six, I mean, who did they really have that was like legitimately cruiserweight material? Like true cruiserweight material. I can't think of anybody else besides Six.
Nobody.
I think they were lacking in that. Like, and you had like the pick of the fucking litter.
Yeah.
I mean, did I want to see a Dean Malenko as part of the NWO? No. Did I want to see a Rey Mysterio as part of the NWO? No. But what about someone like Psychosis?
Right.
I thought that would have been he could have had a decent run as part of the NWO. I don't know how I feel about Eddie Guerrero. I think it might have worked, but again, like, it's all what ifs at this point. But they should have. They should have explored more cruiserweights to be added. Give them a much more rounded roster.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, quantity wasn't their issue. I think as we're watching Sold Out, this is the night that Dusty joins, right? Doesn't he join 98?
Yeah.
He turned on Zbyszko. Anyways, this was the perfect. This is like the perfect time, the perfect situation to where you're trying to. The overall concept of the NWO, once it became a thing, was it was going to be its own entity. It was going to be its own company within a company. They were an invading company. You do that by taking over everything. You know, what if for one of the angles that they do at pay-per-view, the NWO walks away with every single championship in WCW, from the World Heavyweight title to the Tag title, TV title, US title, and Cruiserweight. It's just like they own everything in WCW.
Man, something like that, though, is so tricky in this situation because of the way it went down. I think if Hogan wasn't part of the NWO and you had somebody else instead, and then they took all the titles, that would have worked.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that would have worked.
I'm still playing with that mentality.
Okay.
That Hogan...
Absolutely. That definitely would have worked. Because if we still had Hogan as part of the NWO and they run roughshod with all the titles, fucking forget about it.
What would have happened was that Hogan would win had the World Heavyweight title. He would win the tag team title in a handicap match. He would be handed the television US title, and then he would say, "I'm a cruiserweight now," and take the cruiserweight title. No, I'm still going with a Sting or really anybody with a realistic mentality in professional wrestling. NWO. I think that was the concept, and again, you never want a faction to be too strong in that sense. However, that was the whole point, that they were better than WCW, they were better than that entire roster, and you know, I'm not saying that everyone's going to be champion forever, but it's just at one point they walk away and they have, well, obviously we're better, we have all the gold.
And again, this has been proven to be successful in the way of booking when you look at the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they had every championship in New Japan at the same time, because obviously that wasn't the case, but they came damn near close multiple times.
Right.
And it went over like crazy. And it was a good thing for New Japan.
Especially, too, it's a Gaijin group that is, you know, running with most of your titles in a Japanese company. So same thing here. You're clearly an outsider. You're clearly not wanted. I mean, yeah, the fans love you, but as far as the angle goes, you're clearly not wanted. And you come in and you dominate. You know, you know, think of the like the Tom Brady in the Super Bowl every year. You know, unless you're a fan of it, you don't want it. You don't want that to happen. But God damn it, they're that good, and they're gonna keep. It's gonna keep happening. So that's the case of the NWO, where it could have been, where it's, hey, we're that good. You can't stop us. Your talent pool isn't as good as our talent pool, and that's the way that you get, you know, legitimacy in your faction, is by having them get over. That's where the UWIF and New Japan Pro Wrestling failed, because nobody got over, or one guy got over, I should say.
Yeah, one guy.
And you know, that's your problem with that. That became your problem with the NWO, is that there just wasn't enough guys getting over. It was it was Hogan, and then a little bit of Nash and Hall, and then it became all Nash and Hall, and it wasn't a well-oiled machine from the get-go. And again, I'm not gonna go out and say, I don't want to hear anyone saying, "Oh, Sting would have fixed all the problems." No, I'm not saying that. Sting's one guy, but
he's got the best DVD.
He's got the best DVD. I think leadership goes a long way, and
absolutely, man.
For all the Hogan marks out there, I really don't give a fuck about how much you love Hogan and this and that and carnivals and all that shit. Hulk Hogan lacks leadership. Hulk Hogan is, you know what he is? He's the Master Chief of pro wrestling. He was built. He was built to be indestructible, and goddamn it, he is.
Oh man!
But that's it. He's not a fucking leader. Although technically, the Master Chief could be considered a leader, but I digress. But he didn't build himself to where he's at. He didn't do that on his own, and he has no desire, including today, to help get other talent over. And that's where any faction will fail. You think Evolution would have survived if Triple H buried Randy Orton? I'd say he buried Batista.
Yeah.
But if he buried Randy Orton, now to me, both guys deserve to be buried. Randy Orton fucking sucks too. But again, Evolution doesn't work if you don't evolve. Shit, even DX got their guys over, especially during the DX Army era. X-Pac was fighting for the light heavyweight title. The New Age Outlaws were a successful tag team that won many tag team titles. And then, of course, Triple H. It wasn't like it was just one guy being successful and everybody else was like, go ahead, do whatever you can. It was get everybody fucking over. So that's where the NWO fails. So at the end of the day, they're better than the UWIF, or UWFI, excuse me. I forget their name already.
It's okay.
But they still made the same mistakes in the long run, because this is a company, this is a faction that potentially could have helped save WCW.
Would it have helped the NWO run roughshod over people if they went and shoot it on people, like a couple random stiff kicks here and there, breaking orbital bones and whatnot?
I would have loved to have seen it with Goldberg. Can you imagine having them do that? And we're going back to the Hogan era, but imagine them doing that during during Goldberg's undefeated run. Not with with how they did it.
With the taser.
Yeah. But actually
hurt him.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the heat that you would get?
That's a good point. Yeah, that definitely would have worked, especially if it was Hogan. The Georgia Dome. Yeah.
Do it at the Georgia Dome. Oh, the night that Hogan drops the title. Which, by the way, is fucking stupid that they did it on Nitro. By the way, I get it, you're at the Georgia Dome, but do it on pay-per-view. Hogan versus Goldberg. I don't care for either one of those guys, but fuck. People love those guys. Do it on pay-per-view. Anyways, that's another mistake of WCW. But, do something like that on, again, so just imagine some of the biggest matches that they had, and you shoot. I don't know if we should ever be condoning that type of action, but certainly if you're going to get the name over, I guess that's
one way to do it.
That's the nature of the business, right? It certainly would have worked. It certainly could have worked, I should say. But again, for anyone that's gonna get at me later, NWO wasn't going to be the only thing that saved WCW. But man, if done correctly, If NWO was as hot as they were in 96, 97, and most of 98, in 99, 2000, and 2001, there's a good chance Time Warner would have changed their mind on professional wrestling. If they were still as hot as they are. Because what do they have to go with? The shit product that was 2000. I was 10 years old in 2000. To all due respect to any 10-year-olds that may be listening to this show, 10-year-olds aren't very smart when it comes to what they like, what they don't like. They're wishy-washy. I can tell you, without a doubt in my mind, that WCW was dog shit in 2000.
Oh yeah, it was dog shit.
There was nothing good to watch all year on that fucking.
It was the type of dog shit that when you got it stuck to the bottom of your shoe and you cleaned it off, it was still there.
It was still there, yeah. Yeah, man, it was boot dog shoe. But yeah, it was just overall just it was bad, and it lacked good TV, and NWO during its heyday was good TV, and it was over. And I get it. To some people, like a lot of things, it's a fad. You know, we see that with Bullet Club. Oh, it was cool. Now it's not cool anymore. No, it's still fucking cool. Shut up. You're not a real fan. But you see that, like metal, with heavy metal. Oh yeah, Slayer used to be cool. No, they're still fucking cool. Shut up. Or video games used to be cool when I was a kid. Okay, like you be boring adult then. I don't know, but like it to some people it was a fad. For Life was just a gimmick, and it wasn't something that they really meant. But for others out there, the passionate ones, they still existed. They wanted to watch. But you give them no reason to watch, they're going to go to the competition. And that's why the competition won. Had they have done things right and kept it going strong, there's a good chance that the NWO would have influenced the rest of that fucking company to get their shit together.
Yeah.
I'll never know. We'll never know, but there's a good chance that it could have happened.
Once again, we're doing our obligatory NWO episode. And we're watching WCW NWO Sold Out 1998, and the B team just came in the ring, consisting of Conan, Vicious and Delicious, and Vincent. And they're gonna go up against Ray Traylor and the Steiner brothers with Ted DiBiase.
Oh, he's not Big Bubba anymore.
No, just pre-Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. I can't stand Papa Pump.
I was watching a video earlier today. It was the Steiner Brothers versus Doom.
Yeah.
And he was doing backflip power slams.
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty cool.
Dude, telling you.
That's pretty cool. I can dig that. But yeah, I don't like Scott Steiner. I don't like. Well, yeah. I mean, the Steiner Brothers. I like watching their older stuff, but man, those steroids they got to his head.
Hell yeah, they do.
This is an idiot. I mean, who doesn't love Steiner math? But Jesus. That's another guy too that trimmed the fat in the NWO.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need him.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we watch the B team try to get their shit together, we would like to hear from you guys about your feelings about the NWO. What you liked, what you didn't like, what you would have done different. We're available on social media. We're on Twitter at 20x20crew. We're on Instagram at 20x20crew. You can email us 20x20crew@gmail.com. Of course, we're available on YouTube as well. 20x20crew.com/podcast/YouTube, where we have the following contest. It's where we fantasy book your favorite wrestlers and our favorite wrestlers in matches that normally, probably, and most definitely did not happen. We're also on Facebook. Facebook.com/20x20crew is our official page. And of course, come and hang out and talk in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/20x20talk. And, of course, our home on the web, 20x20crew.com, where you find all of our previous episodes and wrestling knowledge and what have you. This has been pretty enlightening for me. I don't know why we waited so fucking long, but thank you for the fan request, guys. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keep them coming.
And yeah, definitely keep them coming. But yeah, this was nice. I like this. I didn't want to do the cliche NWO episode
where we talk about the history of the NWO.
Yeah. I mean, I just didn't want to do it in a manner that was like done over and over and over and over again. So it was nice that we got to talk about the UWF, which a lot of people don't do.
Man, it's nice I get to talk about NWO without Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and that too, like, because everybody has to talk about Hulk Hogan. So, with all that being said, I am Joe. This is Matt, and until next week, we will see you in the ring.
Some of the closest friends around. And tonight, it just breaks down here. Heenan, I don't know what to make of it, man.
Well, there is no friendship, like I said. They're both in that ring. They both want what each other has. They both want that position. They both want to be on top here at WCW. And the only way to do that is you got to kick people's butts. You got to make enemies.
All right.
Hey, looky here.
You wanted your
Kindall, you got such a big mouth. And we are sick of it.
What do you mean, who's we?
You know who. Hey, this is where the big boys play? What a joke. I tell you what, you go tell Billionaire Ted, you tell him get 3 of his very, very best. Maybe the Nacho Man. Oh, no. Hey, maybe he get the Stinger. Ooh, I'm so scared. You go get anybody you want, because we.
What do you mean we?
We are taking over. You want to go to war? You want a war? You got one. Only let's do it right. In the ring, where it matters. Not on no microphones, not in no newspapers or dirt sheets. Let's do it in the ring, where it matters. If Billionaire Ted and his big boys, if they got any guts,
you're stepping
because
over the line.
We are coming down here.
You're stepping over the line.
And like it or not, we are taking over.
You're out of here. You're out of here. I don't know what to say. We'll see you next week.
The preceding announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.